Okay. All right. Well, Kelly, then why don't we go ahead and get started? Welcome to today's webinar, How to Build an Integrated Sales and Marketing Plan on a Page. Participants will be in listen-only mode. If you have a question during the presentation, please use the chat function, and we'll be having a Q&A at the end of the session. Today's presenters include myself, Diane Williamson, Principal at Forward Vision Marketing, Kelly Stark, who is our founder and principal at Forward Vision Marketing, Philip Sorrells, who's Strategic Marketing Strategy Advisor, and then coming to us from Canada is Dennis Kahn, Marketing Communications Manager. So today we want to talk to you guys about our approach to 2022 sales and marketing planning. And the approach that we like to take is called a plan on a page. And as many people are getting ready to work on their strategic plans for the upcoming year, a lot of people kind of fret that. This year, it might be that you have to update your 5-year long-term plan, or you're doing an annual sales and marketing budget. Or it could be that you have a major product that you're going to be launching and you need to do a product launch. No matter what type of plan you're working on, it really doesn't have to be so painful of a process, especially when you're juggling all of the other activities that you're doing for marketing. I think probably one of the hardest thing is dedicating the time to do this correctly, and making sure that the plan that you do create just doesn't get left in a notebook or forgotten or set aside. So it can a lot of times feel like it's very disconnected from reality, disconnected from your customer's reality, and even become an obstacle to your success. So at Forward Vision, we really want to champion a process that will make you successful, that's driven by an outside perspective, outside in. And that by that, what I mean is the planning process really needs to start with a profound understanding of your market, what drives those buying decisions, the markets that you serve, and ultimately it's an integrated, aligned approach is one of the keys that we see in getting your sales plan together. Next slide, please. So this slide here is just talking a little bit about aligning your sales team, your marketing team, even your operations team, really having everybody align into what the goals and the strategies are going to be for the upcoming year, and from a marketing perspective and helping bring everybody together. Your marketing team can be a leader in that area. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Philip, who's going to walk you through how you get that alignment from all the teams, and how to start your 2022 planning process with something we call StartRight-FinishWell.
All right. Thank you, Diane. I appreciate that. Well, start right, finish well. That is our approach. And really now is the time to adopt a planning process that is almost guaranteed to give you the results that you want. In fact, I can tell you with confidence from my own experience using this approach that if you adopt this approach, start right, finish well, you'll generate plans in about half the time that have about twice the impact. So why is that? Well, there's really 3 key reasons why, and they're all interlinked in a very intimate way. The first reason why is we start with an outside-in approach. In other words, we start with the voice of customer. Now, honestly, how many times have you been in a planning session where the plan was generated by only people inside your company without really giving a deliberate and considerate thought to what is happening with your key customers and what is happening in the market in general? Our approach drives you into those conversations. They form the basis of everything that becomes an action plan as part of your marketing strategy. The second thing is that because we're outside in driven and driven by the voice of the customer, guess what? Alignment starts to become natural. Alignment starts to become natural. It's one thing to align with what the engineering group wants to do, or align with what the marketing group wants to do, or align with what even your bosses want to do. It's a completely different thing when you say, this is the voice of the customer, this is the needs of the market. Then every division, every department, and every person inside those departments can get easily aligned to serving that bigger need. And last, and I think most importantly, our process creates a refinement. We refine and we refine and we refine your plan until it fits on a single sheet of paper. Now, in my 30 some odd years of doing this, believe me, I've generated 3-ring bound binders full of plans that snapped shut and got put on a shelf and never got used again. But when you go through the process of refining and refining and refining to a single sheet of paper, then and only then are you assured that you're really working on the critical few and not the trivial many. So let's take a look now on the next slide at a summary of what goes into that single sheet of paper, what Diane called the plan on a page. Well, first, obviously, it starts with goals. And I'm going to talk more about that next. But it also then says, well, here's the goals. Now, what is the strategy, the big picture strategy of how we achieve those goals? Then it talks about what does the world look like after we achieve the goal? In other words, what are the key performance indicators? And typically, not typically, almost always, we will try to lead you toward numbers, specific numbers that are key performance indicators. Then through a process that will be covered later on in the presentation by Kelly, we're going to talk about how to generate key actions. And we're going to use a process that we call message mapping, where we take customer needs and map them to actions. And that really becomes the playbook, so to speak, of what this plan on a page is going to deliver for your organization. And then last, we go into dependencies and risks, so that everybody on the team knows, where the gaps are, where the gotchas are. And this takes a lot of refinement to get all that down into a single sheet of paper. Sometimes it requires breaking big projects into smaller projects, but that's the goal, single sheet of paper. So a little bit more on goals. There's 4 key goals: business, sales goals, marketing goals, and operational goals. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dennis.
Oh, thank you, Philip. Sorry about that delay there. So I'm going to focus on the marketing side of your strategic plan. And I'm going to talk about 3 things. The marketing tactics that are specific to 3 different growth strategies: the voice of customer, and then customer personas and profile. Okay, next slide, Kelly. Thanks. So this, to me, is the first and most important question to answer as you embark on your planning process. Where will next year's growth come from? Your marketing plan essentially all starts here, right? Questions like, where do you advertise? Which events do you exhibit at? Should you double down on social media? What kind of content do you create? And overall, just how much should you be spending on marketing? So all this depends on which markets and how much growth you're targeting. So let's get started. The first, let's say, growth strategy is growing in your core market. That's where you're already operating today. So perhaps you've already harvested the low-hanging fruit, or maybe you need to dig deeper, or maybe you have a new product launch coming up. This is what I would call bread and butter marketing. It's something that you're already doing and will continue to do and never stops. But let's look a little deeper into this. So the iceberg represents your total addressable market. And the tip of the iceberg is your installed base of existing customers. Just below the waterline are the prospects that you're actively marketing to. And below that is the untapped market. Those are the potential customers that you don't have any visibility of yet. And the marketing tactics are different for each one. So for your large and strategic accounts in your installed base, then this, pardon me, you might want to think about a account-based marketing or ABM program. Now, as we all know, it's much more cost-effective to grow and upsell an existing customer than acquiring a brand new customer. And then for your prospects, this is the typical marketing funnel, right? This is moving people from a lead to a marketing qualified lead to a sales qualified lead. And it's about campaigns and content. You need to have your content created and mapped to the different stages of the buying cycle, from research, evaluation to buying. And you need to have the campaigns, ad campaigns, email campaigns to get out and get that content in front of your customers. And finally, in the untapped part of the market, it's about acquiring the leads and getting them into the sales and marketing funnel. So here, the balance will shift towards more inbound marketing versus outbound. You'll need to reach people that you've never heard of, or people that have never heard of you, have never visited your website or visited your LinkedIn feed. So the next key growth strategy would be expanding into a new country or a new region. So the situation is different because you probably may not have any brand recognition yet. Your competitors may be different. Even the language may be one that you don't even speak yourself. So here you're going to have to build up your brand in parallel with promoting your solutions. And most likely at the beginning, revenue from a new region will be small or perhaps non-existent. So the marketing budget is going to be limited, and you're going to have to pick and choose carefully to get the most bang out of your buck. Now, if you have local partners like resellers or integrators, a great way to establish your presence is by leveraging their reach in the market. So you can think about designing a partner marketing program, finding some high visibility, high profile opportunities that will maximize your exposure in the market. And let's remember that breaking into a new market requires a long-term view. Right? It just takes time and patience to build up trust in your company and your brand, and there may be setbacks. So a good thing to do is to actually sketch out a 3-year plan on market entry, and then think of 2022 as the first year of execution of that 3-year plan. And then in the next slide, say the third growth strategy would be to grow and tackle a new industry vertical. So these here on the bottom left is the core market, and that's where you're operating today. The adjacent markets just beyond the core are where the new industry verticals sit. So these are verticals that your solutions are not currently addressing. But if you added the right product or the right features, then that vertical becomes addressable. Or maybe your current solutions are applicable, but you just haven't focused on that vertical yet. In either case, the first thing you have to do is to analyze and understand that vertical, right? Understand the pain points, understand the customer's needs and their aspirations, what they care about. So this is called voice of customer research. And it's going to provide the basis for your sales pitch. And once you have that, you can map your features and benefits to the things that your customers care about. or perhaps even develop new ones that will resonate with them. Now, if you add a competitive analysis on top of that, then you'll know both what your customers want and what your competitors can offer. And that allows you to create positioning and messaging that is as unique and effective as possible. And that unique positioning is called your value wedge, and something that Kelly is going to talk more about in her portion. So next slide, voice of customer. Now, customer is always right? Strictly speaking, listening to your customers and taking action on that is a discipline or a company culture, not just a one-time process. But since strategic planning and budgeting work on an annual cycle, typically, then doing voice of customer research should happen at least once a year to feed into your planning process. Next slide, please, Kelly. So what's involved with voice of customer research? I break it down into three main categories. The first is internal conversations, and that's about talking to people. So this one is mostly qualitative. So you just go and talk to people across your company, ask them about their customer experiences, get their feedback, and actively solicit their ideas for improvement. You may come across some valuable insights. You may not, but if you don't ask, you'll never know. And of course, syncing up with other departments is important in any case, because strategic planning is about driving organizational alignment. Now, the second category, marketing data, is about number crunching and analysis. So this is quantitative. Here, the focus is not so much on what your customers are saying, but more on how they are behaving. So these are your campaign metrics, click-through rates, website stats. You're looking for what's working and what's not, trends, that kind of thing. So this is not the monthly marketing dashboard with performance metrics. It's a year-over-year analysis with a view on optimizing the spending mix. It's having the data to know where to invest your money, again, in order to get the most bang for your buck. And then the third category, external sources, is what others in the industry are saying. So this might be an interview in the press with an executive from a company that you're targeting, an analyst report on growth drivers and industry dynamics. It could be news about regulatory rules that are about to come into effect. So not all of it will be actionable, but certainly the deeper your research is and the more thoroughly you understand your market, the better your plan will be. Now, in my last slide, I want to leave you with an important point to remember. Don't forget that you are selling and marketing to people, not to companies. Absolutely, there are organizational drivers, context, and behaviors that guide a customer's actions and decisions. But how does a company actually make a decision? Well, companies don't actually make a decision. People do. It basically boils down to a group of people, that, like the influencers, the decision makers, the approvers, getting together and agreeing. And if you do everything right, then they pick you instead of your competitors. So at the end of the day, you're selling and marketing to each of these people individually, and that the decision is made collectively. So what you say to the CFO or to the purchasing department will probably be, or at least should be, different than what you say to the product manager or to the end user. You're not going to use the same sales pitch and emphasize the same value propositions to everybody, because what's important to each individual is different. Depends on who they are and what their job title is. So every touch point that you have, the better you can personalize that interaction, the better your chances are of cutting through that noise. Now, on this note, I will hand off to Kelly, who will have a very interesting demo along these lines for you.
Thanks, Dennis. So I'm going to finish our process with 3 major points. We're going to talk about the message map and putting your value propositions together, and finally putting together a whole calendar for 2022 with all these tactics integrated that you've well thought out in this process. But first, I just couldn't help but follow up what Dennis was saying about marketing to people. I'm really excited about one of our clients. They're called Phenometrics. And they have this amazing technology where they're able to map a person's photo to their personality. They have this tremendous AI techniques that they put together, and it really works. It's called face code. So the future is that you'll be able to market to people, perhaps, the person's profile on social media, and really understanding who that person is and what motivates them. So right now, there's companies like this out there that can help you, but I just wanted to kind of put that teaser out there that perhaps in the future we'll be able to automatically adjust our messages to that person. And here's our template for right now, how we address those customer needs. And what I love to do on this type of template is put down a customer. So marketing Mary, and where she's in the decision-making process, and what is her pain points. Like, she's just got too much on her plate trying to market all the different types of marketing tactics, and needs help on putting their strategy for 2022 together. So this is great when you can really personalize who you're talking to, where they are in that buying decision, and putting those pain points. What we really should see from this is when we go to your website or you're having a presentation like this, we really get to see what are those key messages, because these should come out first and addressing what those customers are. But the follow-up is this template here. And this is called our message map. We like to put it all together. So now we have that customer and what that pain point is, but we address it with our message. How are we solving that pain point? And then we take a lens of, well, how do we reach Marketing Mary? Or how do we reach Peter, the product manager? There's different tactics to reach those different people. And it could also depend on what our message is. So these are the tactics that we would come through in the workshop and trying to put down all this strategy and our goals and our tactics down to this different message mapping. And finally, we have to come to, well, what is our message? And most companies have a value proposition, and from what I usually see, a lot of them focus on the product. What are the product benefits and the functionality of their products? But a lot of times there's so much more that they're kind of overlooking in the ways to reach their customers, especially when we look at their customer needs. Service could be one of the most valuable ways that you could help address and beat those competitors out. Of course, you have your company reputation and the brand that you have there. But right now, financial could be a big term. I mean, how many of you guys are waiting for something from a customer or something that you're trying to buy, the supply chain? If there's ways for you to be able to get your product into those customer hands faster, you're probably going to win in this market. We're also seeing a lot of people go into a SaaS model so that their clients don't have to pay a huge fee up front. There's just different ways that we could address those customer pain points with our value proposition. So I didn't want to overlook that. And I really want you guys to take this next step, because then it really sinks into, is this important? We call it our value wedge. So we take those value propositions that we described ourselves in, and that's our us section. But we look at, is this really important to our prospect, or are we just saying that our company brand is very valuable to them? And finally, let's look and see if it's differentiated from the competitors, and whether or not we're just all saying the same thing. One of my funny case studies that I learned in the process was about Southwest Airlines. They came out with their love campaign. They love their customers. They love their employees, and, put the heart on the plane, and that brand really showed through. So American Airlines said, that sounds good. We can do the same thing. We want to, put their slogan is, we fly because, our customers are important to us. And it didn't go anywhere. We fly because of you, just didn't come through in all the different aspects that they do to service the customer. So they could put it on the slogan, they could put it on their plane, but if it's not believable, they can't prove it, it's just going to fly flat. So once again, this is a good little lens to kind of look at your own positioning in this next year and just make sure that it really does, resonate throughout the entire organization. I want to show this example for our own marketing. We have a big telecom presence. So when we listened to those customers, they came to us and said, man, we are so tired of trying to tell these marketing agencies what our product does. And then we usually get a junior level account manager and they're cycling through. So then we have to re-educate them again. And finally, when they write about our products, they just don't get it right. So knowing those pain points, we came up with our response back to that, we're founded by engineers and marketers obsessed with wireless technology. We understand your products and customers on the same level as you. That gives us the ability to create targeted messages through integrated marketing tactics to dramatically affect your results without that learning curve in half the time and so on and so on. And it's believable because we do have those people experienced on our team. And we do have that knowledge of the market. So this is just an example of how, depending on who you're marketing to, that this could change for your company. So I hope that helps. Finally, I want to just land the plane with one last step in this process, and it makes it all come together. We take that plan on the page, and then we dive down into who those customer profiles are. What are the messaging maps, the customer pain points, our value proposition, and now we put it on your 2022 calendar. Let me show you just a glimpse of what that would look like. So for example, you would have what are the types of communication channels that you're looking for. And a lot of these are going to be driven by events like trade shows or perhaps product launch events. And then the different tactics that you have after. Are you going to modify your website, create a landing page? What blogs need to go out along with those topics? What are the key social media messages that we have to put out? Email campaigns, advertising, PR, sales tools. It could go on and on. But putting together a plan like this that everyone's sharing helps us really execute those tactics and we all get on the same page. So let me just summarize what we've talked about today, and thank you guys for hanging in there with us. The first step is to set your goals. And Philip kind of talked about what that is, and we're going to actually give you a plan on a page to get started on that. The next step is actually going through the strategy workshop. I would encourage you to use a third party. It's always easy when you're all sitting in the room and you're drinking the same Kool-Aid. But to have someone go out there and say, well, you know what, this might not be a real competitive, compelling statement that's differentiating you guys from your competitors. Finally, we'll help you put it all on one page so you can execute and have that calendar together. And we also have experts in all these different areas to help execute that plan together. What we've seen is if somebody takes the time to do this, then they would be able to execute and put this plan in together half the time and have it finish with twice the results. So I hope you'd be interested in contacting us. We would love to start you with a complimentary discovery call. You can email us or go to our website there, and we'll really look at your unique proposition and what we suggest for you. And hopefully we get to work with you on a StartRight-FinishWell workshop and help you put together your 2022 strategy plan. And I see some questions are coming in, so this is great. We have one question about how long does the StartRight-FinishWell workshop take for the planning? And I think that's a great question. We've done it several different formats. So if you like to have it live in-person workshop, we can do that in a day, maybe a day and a half, depending on how complicated it could be. And then we can come back to you with that plan on a page and help you guys lay out those tactics. I also wanted to point out, if you have a new product that you're trying to launch, it's great to formalize that product launch process. We have one client that just decided to do that with us so that they can adopt that strategy throughout their organization anytime they launch a product. And so we also have this ebook that you can have to once again take the same project, same process, but take it to a new product or service launch. Let me get the next question. So does this process ever not work? That's one of the questions that I see, and that's a really good question. I'm going to let Philip answer that.
Thanks, Kelly. That's a hard one to answer. I appreciate the hard one.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's definitely possible for the process to not work, but I really only see that happen in a couple really good examples of it not happening. It really happens in two ways. One is if your planning process doesn't really take into account the voice of customer, if your inputs are really generated by a conference room full of employees of your own company, right? And you don't really have an outside in approach, you just are kind of tricking yourself. You're telling yourself, this is what we think our customers think. And you're hoping that means that they'll want the kind of solutions that you're selling. That's one way, is just, this kind of getting inside your own bubble and assuming that that you can sit around inside your own house and best guess what your customers may really be experiencing. That's one. The second thing is when you don't really have a value wedge, if your service or your product is just another one without something that really differentiates it from your competitors, and it's something your customers really care about, then it's a lot more difficult to have your marketing program really result in the kind of leads that you would hope for. Typically, if you're really just selling a commodity, service, or product, then it's up to price and delivery, which, sometimes that's what you've got to compete with, and you do the best you can. But those are two examples when it kind of doesn't really fit very well.
And, I wanted to make sure that everyone realizes in this workshop, just because you signed up, we have a template that we could give you to get started on this, and we'll email this out to you. This is a plan on a page that Philip was talking about, the starting template that you would start with. And we'll have this emailed to you as well as a link to the replay of the webinar. It's great to kind of, go in here and put together your business goals, sales goals, marketing goals. What's that strategy you're thinking? What are the different metrics you'd like to achieve? So here's just an easy framework on a single page that can help you get started. And then, one of the things I didn't say in our last question about how long it takes for planning, there's different ways that we can execute this. There's, like I said, in person, but there's also, we have several clients that we've done just 3 2-hour sessions over Zoom. And that gives them a little time to kind of stop, think about what they were thinking about in that voice of customer or their messaging and so on. So that's another way that we can go about it and help facilitate that process, especially with a remote team. So let me see if there's any more questions. I guess one of the questions that to follow up on that is how do you validate the pain points? Dennis, do you want to answer that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, there's, if you've gone through external research and, some report or that kind of thing, you've put all that together and they all look good on paper. I call that kind of, those sources would be secondary sources. So you may want to go to primary sources, which is talking directly to your customers. And, talking to customers, if you're on the marketing side, let's say, you may not have access, or if you're trying to break into a new market. So you could do, for example, surveys, and you can do, there are different, survey techniques and different ways to get to the target audience that you want. But getting primary sources would be the best way to validate. And then there's also ways to go through a third party to set up interviews with your potential customers. And that's another really good way to hear probably something that you haven't heard before that is news to you. So I would say primary sources is the way to go.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too that we've done in the past too is working very closely with sales. Sales is that face to the customer, asking sales to go out and validate some of the pain points that you guys have come up with is also another good way to do that. So a couple different ways that you can go about doing that to validate some of those pain points.
And I love this follow-up to that. I think you guys addressed some of it, but the way the question stated is so good is, what's the best way to get my customers excited, engaged in this process?
Well, I would say the number one thing is to really hit on your customers' pain points. So, for example, when we do the message mapping process, we always encourage our clients to use a first person voice. I cannot solve this kind of problem, or my cost for this kind of shipment are too much, or, really use that first person voice, because the way your customers get excited about your solutions is if your solutions really solves a headache, or saves them money, or makes them more productive, or improves their expenses, or increases the revenue. If that really does that, and you've really struck gold on their pain points, then you can be sure they're going to become excited about your products and solutions.
Well, that's great. Well, I just want to thank everyone for attending. And I know there's more questions out there and specifics to their own market. We'd love to jump on a call with you and work through them. I hope this was helpful for you. And like I mentioned, I'm going to follow up with a link to this webinar as well as this template here, the plan on a page. And we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.